What's going on, Runaway Sports? Back with another video, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs' decision to fire Brad Treliving, and was the timing right, and was it a fair? Was it fair to fire Brad Treliving and put the blame on him? And the quick answer to that is the blame is not just on Brad Treliving. You're going to see Craig Berube fired, and there's going to be a lot of changes both in the front office, the coaching staff, and a lot of the players. There's going to be lots of turnover, as there needs to be. But I have a big issue with the timing of the Brad Treliving firing, and I have a big issue with the Toronto Maple Leafs, the way that they've handled the season. Keith Pelly is the number one problem right now with the Toronto Maple Leafs, in my opinion. And I think that his decision to part ways with Masai Ujiri was a terrible decision. And I just don't like too many of the things that he's done with MLSE since he's stepped in. I think the timing of this Brad Treliving firing is terrible. And he even said that this was a decision that they've been talking about for weeks. So why was he not fired weeks ago? Why was he not fired right out of the 3-game losing streak out of the Olympic break? Why was he still here and the man in charge of the trade deadline? That is, for me, it's just organizational malpractice, the timing of the firing. And everyone knows Craig Berube is the next one out. Why is he still here? And that's not a question because I think Berube is horrible and it's all his fault. I just think you got to think of the human aspect and why are you putting Craig Berube through this for the rest of the season when you know he's not going to be the guy? He knows he's not going to be the guy. He's mouthing off in the pressers, blaming the goalie, blaming guys that aren't ultimately at fault, just pointing fingers. It doesn't make any sense to me. And the timing of what the Leafs have been doing is off. Keith Pelly should be, saying to the Leafs organization and the ones making the decisions, we are going to tank. He doesn't need to come out and say we're going to tank, but he needs to make the moves that show that we are tanking, because the Leafs need to get in the top 5 and keep that pick. If they hand Boston the 6th or the 7th or 8th pick, it is going to be a disaster. And that player can become a superstar, haunt the Leafs for the next 15 years, and the Leafs will never hear the end of it. So they need to try and get in that top 5 in the lottery odds. That's my take on what Pelly should be doing, although he's not going to do with just 5 games left. It seems like that ship sailed. But the timing on this Treliving firing is off. This should have been done a month ago, either a month ago or pushed into the offseason. Doing it now is absolutely horrendous. Now, does he deserve to be fired? Absolutely 100%. He drove this team into the ground. He made a disaster at this year's trade deadline, horrible trades at last year's deadline, and it was tough overall. He had a trade for Marner for Ranton that Marner decided he was not going to accept. That's not on Treliving. He came out and found a good deal, and that was on Marner. But at the end of the day, you are at the top of the organization, just under Keith Pelly. He was the acting president of the Maple Leafs, and the decisions he made, the offseason moves he made, were not good enough. It was not well planned out, and as a result, the Leafs are where they're at. And this is a results-driven business. That is sports. That's what it is. And Brad Treliving was, over the last year and a bit, he's been terrible at his job. It's pretty simple. That's all there is to say about it. And he deserved to be fired 1,000%, but he should have been fired a month and a half ago. That's the argument that I'm making, and that's on Keith Pelly. I think Keith Pelly needs to hire a president and a guy who deals with the hockey stuff, because Keith Pelly has no idea about hockey. He needs to hire a president similar to Brendan Shanahan. I like the idea of Chris Pronger. That's just one option. There are many. But he needs to hire a president who is then going to work with him to hire the GM, who will then work to hire the next head coach. That's the order of the operation that needs to be taking place. I'm not sure that's going to be what ultimately happens. He might hire a GM and say he's the president and GM, and really Keith Pelly keeps on acting as the president, which is wrong, and that's not what this team needs at this point. But overall, Brad Treliving deserved to be fired, and he should have been fired weeks ago. That's the bottom line. That's my take on this situation. The Carlo trade was horrible. In hindsight, it's always easy to talk about it in hindsight. I liked the trade at the time. You were getting Brandon Carlo, and the Leafs they were that close to winning the Cup last year. So we could be having a total different conversation, but it's a results-driven league, and that's not what happened. What happened is the Leafs underachieved significantly this year and are in the situation they're in, and that's why Brad Treliving is out. He should have been out a while ago. Let me know down in the comment section your thoughts on the Toronto Maple Leafs, the current state of the organization, the order of the operations and what's happened, the timing of everything. I disagree with the timing, but I agree with the decision to fire him. He needed to go. He did not deserve to stay, and that's where we're at right now with the Leafs. Hopefully they get this figured out, and Keith Pelly figures out what needs to be done and what's best for the organization. Let me know the good stuff down in the comment section. As always, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. If you guys new, see you guys all in the next video, and as always, go Leafs go.